as we prepare for Connect, Co-Create, and Innovate. Ladies and gentlemen, may we please ask you to take your seats? The Legal Innovation Summit will commence in 10 minutes. Thank you. For generations, the law has moved with caution, precedent over possibility, certainty over change. But the ground beneath us is shifting. Intelligence is no longer only human. Tools think, systems learn. The rules are being rewritten in real time. Recognizing this moment is easy. Acting on it is everything. This is the gap. So we gather from across Africa and across the world, council and founders, regulators and rule breakers, not to watch the future arrive, but to make it, to connect what was separate, to co-create what doesn't yet exist, to innovate, because how the forward jet.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please take your seats. Two nights ago, 6 p.m. in the office, I realized that I needed to send a renewal agreement if we were to be paid by the 25th, which is tomorrow. And so I did what any entrepreneur would do. I called my lawyer. My lawyer said, well, you're not going to get that contract this evening. The earliest I can do for you is next week. And so I did the second best thing any entrepreneur can do, ChatGPT. I uploaded our existing agreement into ChatGPT. I asked for updates. It told me this is the best it can do. And so I went to ChatGPT's nemesis, Claude. Claude added a few clauses and said, this is the best I can do. You're pretty solid, but still a little bit risky because it's not according to South African law. So I went onto Google and I said, what AI can give me South African law? Found one. I'm not going to name it because they're not paying me. Logged on, found an option that allows me to upload an agreement. It makes it South African legal grade. For 99 Rand, I've got 3 exports. And within an hour and a half, I had an upgraded contract that could stand in a South African court of law. Not tomorrow, not next week, by 7:30. So ladies and gentlemen, that is why we are gathered here today. Because the face and industry of law is changing, is innovating faster than ever before. And this gathering, although has brought together legal professions, or professionals rather, it impacts all of business. It impacts banks, it impacts mining, it impacts pharmaceuticals, it impacts even little old Samke sitting in Johannesburg with her team of one in the office and the other one in Lagos, looking to get her money on the 25th. So, good morning, Sanbonani. Welcome to the second edition of the Legal Innovation Summit brought to you by Catalent. My name is Samke Mhlongo, and I am a strategist, an author, a speaker, and someone trying to get paid and get paid quickly. I will be your program director for the next 2 days, in days 1 and 2 of the day summit, and in the gala portion of our summit, which I pray you are all attending and have a few hours to get your ball gowns ready. Ladies and gentlemen, we gather here because we need to have a conversation about the future of business, a conversation about governance, a conversation about leadership, and a conversation about the economics that are affected by law. Many organizations treat law like a cost center, when actually it's a very economic backbone of business. It decides whether or not you get paid, it decides whether or not you continue being paid, and it decides whether or not you'll pay in a court of law, which I have found myself in, sued twice, story for another day. So to our speakers, our sponsors, our partners, and our audience members and professional peers gathered here today, welcome. A few housekeeping announcements. If you would like to use the Wi-Fi, there is Wi-Fi throughout the venue, and the name is capital L, capital I, capital S, Legal Innovation Summit, abbreviated. And the Wi-Fi password is capital L, capital I, capital S, at 2026. All right? If you need more information about the agenda or the Wi-Fi, there is a WhatsApp group that was, the link was included in the aid memoir. So throughout the day, we'll be putting out any announcements you need in that WhatsApp group. Please open up that aid memoir and join that WhatsApp group. The password is in there as well. If you'd like to use the restrooms, they are out through the doors, down through the passageway, into the left, and on the left and the right, you'll see the bathrooms. I won't make any smoking announcements because you shouldn't be, and I won't bother. With the announcements and the formalities out the way, it's my pleasure to introduce someone who is a friend of the summit to come and do the official welcome. And he is a man known as a transformation strategist. keynote speaker, CEO, and chief Imagineer. He works with leaders and teams to build visions by combining strategic thinking, human-centered leadership, and practical innovation. He's known for his ability to challenge thinking and is passionate about organizations disrupting their industries instead of merely responding to them. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to ask you to give me, please, a warm welcome and warm round of applause as we introduce onto the stage Lyndon Barnes. Till the speaker gets to the podium.
But we want you to participate, right? I think it's about co-creation. Is it on? Hello, hello. Okay, there we go. Right. So I thought to welcome you. I'll ask you a few questions. You are legally trained, you are advanced people, you are intelligent people. And so I've got a few questions, but I don't have a long time. So you have to be quick if you know the answers. If you don't know, don't worry. Right, first question to welcome you as you think about innovation here today. I just want to stimulate your thinking on how we need to participate. Do you know how many applications the Guinness Book of Records gets each year? Right? Okay, 50 to 60,000 people every year. I mean, trying to do things differently, trying to go the extra mile as far as that is concerned. Right. Imagine your life without that little thing. You know, those of you who drink beer or Cokes. Right? Now, that was started by a guy called Ernie Fraser way back in 1959 when he went picnicking with his kids and he forgot his tin opener at home and he started thinking. And he invented this. In 1980, his business, the turnover was 500 million. Now that's what, 34 years or many years ago. Just a small addition to that. Imagine your children's life without this, not the ice cream, the bendable straw, right? Or your grandparents, or somebody sick in hospital. It's so easy to give them that bendable straw. Now, that didn't exist a few years ago until Joseph Friedman, struggled with his child, and then he took a little bit of wire and he put it around the old straw, and then he was able to bend it. And he tried to sell the patent, by the way. Nobody wanted to buy it. And then his sister encouraged him to start their own business. And now it's nearly $500 billion annually that's being done across the world. America alone uses 180 billion of these bendable straws. Small change of innovation, great effects, okay, going forward. Imagine your children's lives without that pencil with the eraser. there, right? Nearly every pencil has it now. So this guy, interestingly enough, is a Jamaican guy, Hyman Lipman. He just took the two and put it together. That's it. And then he sold it, even in the early 1900s. He sold it for $100,000 then. And the guy who bought it, then went on, and you can see it on every single pencil. Another small change, just putting the two together, okay, on every pencil. So innovation can be small tweaks or changes with profound effects. So as you come here, don't think that you have to think of something completely magical, right? We want to build and we want you to participate, and small ideas can lead to big things. It can have profound effects. Another question for you: what do these have in common? You don't have to answer, but I want you to think about it. Just take a look. What do they have in common? Well, if somebody has an answer, I'm happy to take one quickly. Yes, ma'am. All invented in South Africa. I wish, but not. Wish, but a good guess, and thanks for a vote of confidence. Right. Now, all of these, yes, ma'am? Okay, could be, yes, but let me tell you the real one. All invented by women. Yeah, right. So interestingly enough, Tabitha, she was part of a group like, one of these church groups that was in the woods. And she saw the men, cutting the wood with a saw, and they wasted one. They would go one and they have to lift it up and then do it again. And she thought, why waste that move? And she then decided to do this. And became famous for the circular. Ruth Wakefield, don't think that the chocolate fell in by mistake. No, she actually designed that. I can't tell you all the stories. I don't have time. But Betty Graham's story is interesting, right? She was a typist, and she would have to retype every time when she made a mistake. And then she saw the people painting over graffiti. And she said, that's a great idea. Then the next day there was something else. So she made her own paint, okay? It was called Mistakes Out at first. And then she built this business on the side while being a secretary until they fired her because she made a little mistake by putting her own company name on the letterhead. And then the business just grew and grew. She went through one husband, and the second husband tried to steal it from her. And she won it, sold it for 46 billion rand, and then 6 months afterwards died at 50. Sad story. But right. Grace Murray Hooper was in the US Army. She discovered that. Margaret Knight did a square bag, which is synonymous with American shopping, and many other inventions. This other one is interesting. Mary Anderson. She was in the tram. If you remember the old movies, and you would see the tram and it rains, and then somebody would put their hands out and wipe the window, right? And she kept on seeing this and thought, okay, so somebody's there wiping the window. Why can't I make a mechanical arm? And all the men told her she's crazy. It's not going to work. And the rest is history. All of our cars have it now. So ladies, you can invent and you can do things. Kevlar vest, how many lives hasn't this woman saved? You see it in all the movies, right? They shoot and then the guy just stands up again, etc. So right, now, what does this have in common? Oh, there you go. all South Africans, right? All South Africans. Interesting story. Alan Cormack won a Nobel Prize, by the way, for the CAT scan globally. The oil from coal, Cecil, the world's first and largest converter. Speed gun, I happened to actually attend that Cricket World Cup then when I was working for Standard Bank. And when they used the gun for the first time. And then it went on to tennis, and it went on to all the other sports. A South African guy. Global impact, okay? Dollar said, this is actually another sad story. Not so sad, though. Eric Merrifield, he was the harbor master in East London. And he came up with this idea. You see it all over the world now. It breaks the waves when they come all over the world. The guy didn't patent it. He didn't have a lawyer. Okay. Prattley Putty, George Prattley, South African guy. And when they went to the moon in 1969, he took Prattley Putty with him. Do you know what Mark Shuttleworth took to the moon when he went? The Sunday Times. This was another one who saved a lot of lives. You saw that before, that they would reuse the needles, right? And Vaal University Technikon came up with a single use and is globally used. So it doesn't matter where you sit. You can make global impact. Yeah. What do these have in common? Quick one. Right. All inventions by black people. So just in case you think you're black, you can't invent, don't worry. There's a lot more. I just took like the first 20. All right? So really to welcome you and say, we can all participate. Anyone can innovate. You're not here to sit only, but you're here to participate. You know, I say if you don't innovate, you die. Be active, you constantly have to use your mind and say, how can I do things differently? How can I tweak things? How can I do something else? There was Tandi, as Samke was telling her story. Tandi was a small business owner, and she was on the cusp of getting a big lucrative contract, and they sent a 42-page document. And she didn't have the access to resources, didn't know how to do it. What does she do? She signed it, like all of us do. And what was supposed to be, you know, a golden cow became a problem for her when the contract didn't meet her needs later on. And there was a problem for Tandi. And we have that, us ordinary people, us small businesses. We don't have access. You just heard her story of going to one of her friends, whether it's Claude or Lisa or whatever the case might be. So as we think today and over the next 2 days, let us remember that behind every file, there's a face. I remember I was consulting with the Department of Justice. I don't know if you recall, but somewhere in 2013, they were taking the Office of the Chief Justice out of the Department of Justice in terms of admin and salaries. And I was part of that transition to take them out. And I was talking to them, and you know, the people were so downhearted because every person that they get in contact to has lost most of the time when you go to the masters of the court, you lost something. And we're talking about this and how tech can help them. Now, 20 odd years later, or maybe 16 years later, same topic, right? As we'll talk about AI, etc. There are files, and we've moved from paper files to digital files, etc. But just remember that there are people at the back end of that. You know, we've moved from every contract that we have. Understand that there's a consequence to that. Behind every legal decision, there is a human story. So as we innovate, it's not only about technical efficiencies, not about doing things faster, but doing things better. Of course, we want all of those things. And we've seen some good progress in our community and in our system. Now that we can have online hearings, we can have online legal dispute resolutions. These things are great. It's now no longer about process, about people also and meeting their needs. So constantly we've got to keep this in mind. And of course, now we have AI and the AI moment that we have to think. So now things can happen faster, research can happen faster, repetitive tasks can be done in a couple of seconds. And then what happens? You now have more time on your hands, right? And what are you doing with that time on your hands? There's many things you can do. You can, of course, get more clients. You know, you no longer can bill per hour now, right? You now have to think about outcomes. Okay, because that's gone now. Because you take a few seconds to get something. What are you going to do with that time? And I want to leave this thought as you innovate to think about that as you bring AI on board. Just remember that there is still a human there, and maybe you can lift up your eyes and spend some more quality time with those people. So please, as we welcome you here today, I want to remind you to move your thoughts from files to faces, and to move your thoughts from paper to people. Make an impact, access, give people access, make people understand the agreement. Some of us don't understand it, you know, and now you've got that time that you can spend. You can build a better relationship as you go forward. And today, we are encouraging that your conversations must lead to actions. Not just to talk about things, but build some plans. So in closing, I'd like to welcome you all here. And we thank Naomi for putting this thing together. She's done so wonderfully. It's a second. Give her a round of applause, right? She's absolutely been phenomenal, and you're going to hear from her next. But, you know, just to take the grit and determination of sticking with something and innovating. And we're seeing it in action. The fact that we are all here today. So I decided to do an ode to Naomi as I end and leave the stage, right? Just listen to the words. I used a little friend. I don't know if it was Claude or or someone. I used a friend to help me. But welcome.
Johannesburg, stand up! Legal innovation, here we go! Johannesburg, stand up! Legal innovation, here we go! Let's go! Started with a vision, no fear in her eyes. Naomi makes things happen, she don't watch it pass her by. Built the stage for lawyers, said he always gotta die. From the boardroom to the courtroom, watch the future multiply. Innovate, that's the only way. From files to faces, paper turns to people today. Got AI on our side, giving back the time, so we use it for the human. That's the bottom line. 42-page contracts, full of clauses, full of maze. We cutting through the haze, now building something built to amaze. She got cats in the building, that's the kind of cash. 20 years of data proven law can adapt. Innovate or die, that's the only way. From files to faces, paper turns to people today. Got AI on our side, giving back the time, so we use it for the human. That's the bottom line. From files to faces, from paper to people. Let's go.
Good morning, everyone. So how do I beat that? I think that was my opening remarks. It was my welcome, all done by AI. So I can go sit down now. Right, thank you. A very good morning, everyone. This is just such an honor to see all of you here. Everyone that we've engaged with during the last couple of months. Our speakers that have come from far and wide. Our guests that have traveled from across Africa, across South Africa, and just across the traffic light, because I've seen so many of us caught in the terrible Sandton, Johannesburg traffic. So thank you for setting up your time and letting AI do all your work for today. I hope you guys have built agents. They are answering your clients. They are drafting your contracts. But don't send it out to clients yet, because some care does not matter how little time we have. You still send it to your friend to review your contract. But today we are here to look at where the future of law is going through. We talk about it all the time in our boardrooms, with our clients, with our friends. We use technology every single day. But what does that mean for the legal profession? The Legal Innovation Summit has always been built on the premise that we bring business, law, and technology together. Because I always say that without lawyers, we cannot have solid foundations for our businesses. We can't grow, we can't innovate. And our strategy 100% need our lawyers to help us beat our competitors. But in the same sense, lawyers needs business, because otherwise we won't be able to send those invoices out at the end of the month. We won't be able to sit here in this room and bring everyone together. So that's why we have created a platform that looks at all three: law, business, and technology. Because technology is what will enable us to create the next frontier. We will hear a lot of conversations around AI. We will hear a lot of conversations about innovating. And I think a lot of the innovations that Lyndon has just showed us was not technology, the straw, bending the straw. It's simply about how do we do things differently? It's about asking the question, how do we do it differently? Do we do it differently at all? Ask the questions. And I think we're not here to come up with answers, but we are here to come up with questions, to come up with more questions. Because as the saying goes, and I think I heard it in a movie, I really can't remember, but if you sit in the question long enough, the answer will come to you. And I find that the busier we are, we have technology to help us, but we don't have time. We don't have time to actually sit with these questions. It's about productivity. It's about getting everything out. It's about having an answer yesterday. But we have to stop if we are going to create our next future. We do not want to be disrupted. We do not want to be the profession that one day we wake up and an Uber has taken over. We are creating the Uber. We are building our planes as we are here. We're putting the wings on, and we are telling the market partners, we are here. We are not the Dr. Knows, like so oftentimes when I was still practicing, we were referred to, or our teams were referred to, but we are here to partner with you to be able to create the future. So to our incredible speakers, Professor Dan Katz, Nikki Shaver, thank you for flying all the way to come and engage in these questions with the African and the South African audience. To all of our other speakers, thank you very much for your time. I've just listened to many of the conversations, and you guys are in for an incredible treat. To all our partners, please visit them all at the back. They've put in an incredible amount of work to make this possible. And to my business partner, co-founder, the person that stands behind me, when this was still a vision and this was still a dream, our dear George said, I'm in. I don't know anything about law, but I'm in. Let's make this vision a reality. So on behalf of the two of us, we officially welcome you to Legal Innovation Summit 2026. Thank you.
I love lawyers, fast learners. I emceed the Africa FinTech Summit for a period of about 5 years. And let me tell you, them tech people, stubborn. So much easier crowd. And also I can say that because, you know, I've handed over the baton now, so not too worried about affecting my next paycheck. Right, I kid. Thank you, Naomi, for that opening, and another round of applause to someone who you may not see, but who also spends sleepless nights, who is the spine of today, who makes sure that the running order makes sense, suppliers are in place, the seating is aesthetically pleasing, the sound works, we're having no load shedding in Jesus' name, and someone who even works in making sure that this gathering makes commercial sense for sponsors. You know, why would they pay for us to have coffees, refreshments, be in an absolutely beautiful venue? I mean, as a professional speaker, this is the top venue in South Africa. So Odette, Odie, big round of applause to you. Wherever, I don't even see her in the room, probably fighting fires somewhere. But we appreciate you, and it's often the people behind the scenes that don't get the glory, right? And as the lawyers, when you've drafted that whole big contract, and then it's the bankers that are sitting there signing the deal and making the press announcements, and you're like, did you forget to thank somebody perhaps? I had a stint as a banker at Investec, so I know all about contracts and conveyancing and rushing to ask that legal consultant, please, 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 I need this contract out. Either my client needs this car this afternoon, or they want this house, they want to sign. So as a former banker, I also want to just thank you from my past self for all the work you do as well. Lyndon, thank you very much for that beautiful opening. Sorry, the light is blinding me. I keep thinking you're there, you're right. Thank you for that opening. DJ Maporisa is definitely in trouble if you made that. You said you made that using what? AI. I know there's Suno that makes AI, but yeah, DJ Maporisa, Casper your vest. Lyndon, if maybe in your years as you progress, you see that, I want to try something, I think you really could have a stint as a DJ Barons. So give it a think. I was very disappointed to see that it was a Black person, in fact, that invented the aircon, because the aircon still is one of the biggest contention points between the races in the workplace. You know who wants it cold. If you're not clapping, it's you. Speaking about the workplace and speaking about uncertain futures, one of the challenges in conversations about artificial intelligence is that we tend to swing between doom and gloom and a prosperous and wonderful world for all, where we are reaching near zero cost for travel, for accommodation. We won't need to own anything. Sharing economy scares me a little, but looking at my pension fund balance could be something that I'm looking forward to. But the reality, of course, is that we are living in between these two extremes, and no one can actually accurately predict how it's going to work out, which is exactly why it is important for us to have credible voices with academic rigor, technological expertise, and practical application who can help shed some light for us. So our next speaker is one of those. He is recognized globally for his work at the intersection of law, artificial intelligence, and emerging technology. He has become one of the leading voices helping organizations think more critically about the future of legal systems and responsible innovation. He is a scientist, technologist, entrepreneur, educator. He teaches, bear with me, artificial intelligence and law, legal technology and innovation, blockchain and cryptocurrency law, and legal process improvement at Illinois Institute of Technology, Chicago-Kent College of Law. Mouthful. Where he has spent years helping prepare legal professionals for a technology-enabled future. So ladies and gentlemen, your bodies may be in Johannesburg, but we're about to go to Illinois, okay? His work has earned recognition amongst the First Case 50, the American Bar Association's Legal Rebels, and most recently, the Financial Times Top 20 Legal Market Shapers of the past 20 years. His travel schedule alone will tell you the story. He traveled from Chicago to Singapore to teach there. From Singapore, he joins us here in Johannesburg just for the summit before he heads to Cambridge and then on to Germany to teach once again. Ladies and gentlemen, the best of the best globally, Professor Daniel Katz. While you take care of that, Prof. Katz, I wonder who has been listening. Is that you?
I've been listening.
Okay, well, if you've been listening, can you
There's no song in this, I apologize. Okay, that came out of nowhere, but that's the creative future that we're in now.
I'm telling you, and with Lyndon, you never know. But Prof. Katz, let me see if you pay as much attention to speakers as students do and audience members do when you are speaking. Can you remind me of the unfortunate name of that Jamaican man that invented pencil and eraser?
I didn't remember the name. I did remember that he just put two small things together, and that was it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
Anyone else remember his name?
An exam. No one told me that. I get the exams. That's what.
I see. I see. Shall I remind you? Hyman Lipman?
Processing, that's the part of computer science that focuses on how machines come to understand language. And, I've personally been working in this area for more than 15 years, trying to think about how we might use AI models in the legal domain. I've done that both commercially. I had a company that I sold a number of years ago to an outsourcing business called Elevate. And in my academic capacity, I've done a number of papers and have worked on this in this area in a variety of different ways. I gave a talk in 2022 called "Breaking the Legal Language Barrier?" ? I think at Stanford. I think I'll delete the question mark now. So it has been hard historically to explain to people about the nature of the changes that have been taking place in computer science to folks in the legal sector. I think part of it is that there's a kind of robo-lawyer fatigue that comes in from the prior decade. There was like a robot lawyer story about, I don't know, every 4 to 6 weeks for years on end. And I think people said, well, I never met a robot lawyer, but they kept writing all these stories about robot lawyers. I think part of it is that people hadn't had a more clear demonstration project about the nature of the capability increase that has taken place. But now we're more than 3 years into what is arguably / unambiguously the most successful product launch in history. There's no historical analog for the rate of adoption of a new technology at the rate at which this has kind of rolled in. So in the first 100 days, we had 100 million daily users, and now we have 1 billion daily active users across the respective models. So this has creeped in and then just, showed up all at once. Now, ChatGPT will go down as the kind of beginning of the mainstreaming of this, but of course, now every other major technology company and then some is in on all of this. So over the past few years, this has gone from a very niche topic, really, people tangentially cared about, to very mainstream. I mean, literally, heads of state are meeting all the time talking about what's the AI strategy for the country, for groups of countries and what have you. And that's true literally everywhere in the entire world now. And of course, there's nothing more mainstream than showing up in The Simpsons and South Park. So there's an episode about both. At the end of the South Park episode, all the students are writing their exams with ChatGPT, and all the professors are grading with ChatGPT. So I think that's where this ends in the end. But things are moving really quickly, and there's been a lot of technical developments. And I'm like a person who does this all day, every day, and nothing else. And I find it completely overwhelming. So I imagine many of you who have a day job who's like being a lawyer or, kind of working in business, just, you must find it even more overwhelming because, again, I'm literally doing nothing but this. So it's hard to kind of keep up with it all. Now, a tremendous amount has happened since this sort of first warning shot, I guess, November 30th, 2022, in the legal world and beyond. And so today I want to kind of give you a distillation to start this summit. Kind of what has happened in the recent past, what is really happening right now, what is the actual present? Because I think people live in different realities, based on what information they have, what they've seen and been exposed to. And so I'd like to kind of read everybody in, at least in terms of my perspective. And then I want to look not like too far in the future, just in the near-term future, just kind of set the stage. Okay, so let's start here, the recent past. How we got here was, generative AI shows up in most people's lives in the last 3 or 4 years. It didn't come out of nowhere. Machines have been getting better at understanding, and I'm going to put quotes around understanding, but understanding language. If you look, one of the things they do in computer science is called benchmarking. They take a task, say that a person does, or a group of tasks, and they compare it to computers. And that's been a long-standing idea in computer science for a very long time. A whole lot of progress. So each of these lines is the average over maybe 10, 20, 30 tasks. And what you'll see is that machines weren't even close to people, and then all of a sudden, all at once, a bunch of different models and methods were able to match or exceed human performance in a range of tasks. And that happened kind of at the end of the last decade. And that was kind of the read-in before ChatGPT shows up. That was beginning to happen with computers. And part of how we got there is to grow these models larger and larger. So something like GPT-2, which was released in 2019, it's about 1 billion parameters, 1.5 billion parameters. And then by the time GPT-4 comes out, it's 1,000 times larger. So you take something that's pretty large, honestly, to begin with, and you 1,000x that thing, sort of your expectations can kind of, it's hard to kind of map into all of that. And what can happen is the things that feel untouchable can come within reach. It's mostly, until relatively recently, just the story of brute force computing more than anything else. The power of a lot of computers. Now, if you look at the history of computing, a computer would be like the size of this room in the 1960s, and then we nanoized it to the point where this is more powerful than that computer. And now we're kind of going back in time to having these enormous data centers full of tons of compute. So, you know, the tide goes in, the tide goes out. But one of the things that's been happening in computers for a very long time is the speed of a chip has been doubling. The fastest chip about every 18 to 36 months for 70-ish years, and that's called Moore's Law. So you take a number that's large and double and double and double and double. That's exponential growth. So that's on the chip kind of side. And just to kind of put a point on it, here's the CEO of NVIDIA, 1,000,000x increase in 10 years. By the way, computers were not like actually terrible in 2016. They were pretty fast then. But you go up like 1 million from there. Again, this is like, we don't have like a good mental model for things going up 1 million. Again, computers, many of us were around in 2016. They were okay-ish then, right? Yeah. Now the speed of data of storing data. In my lifetime, $300,000 for 1 gig, like a thumb drive might have 10 gigs on it. 1981, they'd have armed guards. It'd be $3 million for a 10 gig thumb drive. And like, you know, they'd have to guard it like it was the, you know, crown jewels or something like this. And now it's so cheap, they'll give you a free one, you know. Here's a free thing. Here's a pen and a squishy ball. No problem. It's a penny a gig now. Penny a gig or less. So you take really fast chips, lots of ability to store digitized data and apply that to patterns and language. And what begins to happen is you can cross the divide into semantics. So machines are awesome at syntax. If you Control F a 500-page document, you'll find every single instance of that word in a document. And that was true 25 years ago. What wasn't true is machines' ability to understand the semantic nuance. Now, I'm a law professor. One of the things we do in law school is spend a lot of time painstakingly, teaching people to use semantics, to use words very carefully and very precisely. And that machines weren't even close to capable to that not all that long ago. And now we've begun to cross the divide into semantics. So AI, obviously, is a big field. It's got a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things beyond generative AI and agentic AI. It's a big, again, things like driverless cars, for example. I mean, that's like a Waymo or something like that. That involves a computer vision models and stuff like that. That's not what we're going to talk about today, but that's obviously pretty impactful type of thing, broadly speaking. I'm going to mostly talk about generative and agentic AI today. But I want to just mention, this is not a minor thing in the big picture. The reason we see, the G20 and all these leaders meeting about this is the entire economy is now wrapped around all of this. So 9 of the 10 most valuable companies on the planet are involved in this. We are building incredibly large data centers all over the world. And it's all powered by energy at its core. I'm to the point where there was a nuclear incident. This is in the United States back in the 1970s, and Microsoft bought 3 Mile Island, which was where there was a famous nuclear incident. Energy is what powers all of this. So that's just to kind of set the stage in general. So this is important, by the way. If you don't even care about legal innovation, your client's whole world is starting to come in this direction, even in ways clients you never expected. They're they're getting in on this. And so knowing about this broadly as a lawyer is important, independent of its in use within law. So, but let's zoom into law and talk about, why that might be interesting here. Well, of course, language is the centerpiece of this field, all right? There is no field other than being, a literature professor where language is more central than I can think of than in law. We trade in words. All roads lead to a document in law, basically. You consume a document, you produce a document, or you do both in some type of work area. All roads lead to documents, and all roads lead to language. And so if machines can begin to actually understand, putting quotes around understand, not just general language, but perhaps legalese, well, that could actually be pretty profound for our field in ways that the previous generations of technologies that have come into to law have not been able to be as impactful. But then that raises the question, how well can machines do this generation of machines do on law-related tasks? So we thought that some sort of public demonstration project might help crystallize the point in people's minds. So right before the holidays in 2022, I called my frequent collaborator, Mike Bomarito, I've done a lot of work with, and said, why don't we just try to evaluate the multiple choice portion of, there isn't a US bar exam, but the bar exam that's done in 33 of the 50 US states. And we did that, and it did pretty well. We had never had a computer that could do anything like that before. And that paper we published at the end of 2022 called GPT Takes the Bar Exam. My friend Pablo calls it GPT Fails the Bar Exam. I don't like that. I like Takes the Bar Exam, so we'll go with that. But so we made it. This is a parody magazine called The Onion. You know what this is. Dad, I don't want to be a lawyer. I want to be an artist. No, son, you're going to make something of yourself. You're going to law school or be a doctor. Do something serious. And so we made it in The Onion. That was really cool. Little do we know at that time that would put us on the path to be a part of the launch of GPT-4. And so with my friend Pablo and Sean, and Mike, we wrote this paper, GPT passes the bar exam. GPT-4 passes the bar exam. This is on national television in the United States. This is the original paper, later published in Philosophical Transaction of the Royal Society, which is the oldest scientific journal. It's where they did the kite experiment with Benjamin Franklin, the electricity experiment. Yeah, this is like Sir Isaac Newton territory. So that's it. This is the high watermark for me. It's all downhill. I'm on the back nine, guys. This is it. But anyway, just to kind of run through it briefly, and then we'll get, the bar exam there is kind of like a multiple choice component and 2 classes of essays. And I'll just hit the highlights and we'll move on. But the multiple choice is like the classic law topics, torts, contracts, property, things like this, criminal law. And, you have to answer a multiple choice question, both often the answer and the reason. And you have to do one of these questions every 1 minute and 48 seconds on average for hours on end. I think this is a little bit of a story of the period up to 2023, because you see that in 2019, a GPT-2 can't even process the questions, and it would basically get 0%. And then the models can kind of get where random guessing level is, and that's in maybe 2020, 2021. But if you just guess C every time on a multiple choice, you're going to get 25% out of 4 choices, right? So that's that dashed line there. Then you see, hey, these can beat random chance, but I wouldn't pop the champagne bottles at 35 or 50%. And then there's this big quality improvement where it's better than the average test taker and way above the passing threshold. And a similar pattern is sort of in the essays. Again, classic topics. I'm going to distribute the slides. You can have all these slides, so so no problem. But we did not do prompt engineering, by the way. That is literally a summary of the instructions they give the test taker. That's it. Now, we could have done that, obviously. This is to show what's the lower bound, what's the minimum of the capabilities here. So this is an example of a question. I won't get into the details because it involves US law, but you have to read all that and write a response, and you have to do this in 30 minutes per question, and there's 3 subparts. Now, if you look at this right here, that is not enough to pass the bar exam. It's both wrong substantively, but it's you can't write 3 sentences and pass a bar exam. You got to write more. So that you can just immediately say that's not passing. Just look at it in 2 seconds. No way. When you get to ChatGPT, you have to really get into the details of that question to understand its shortcomings. on its face, if you read it, you would be convinced by it. Now, it's partially right, partially wrong, but whereas GPT-4 answer is pretty solid, like exactly kind of identifies the legal rule, connects it, does some analysis, writes a conclusion, kind of rinse and repeat. And so there's this big, quality improvement. And we sort of see that through the balance of the exam. If you want to go look at all the essays and the outputs, you can go here. They're all in the repo there. The point of this exercise wasn't like, I think the bar exam or whatever is the be all end all. It was meant to try to highlight to people that these models have come of age, that they're serious now. In fact, by the way, just to note, GPT-4 does not even exist basically anymore. It's retired. It's playing shuffleboard now. It's retired. That's it. It doesn't. You can't even use it anymore. They just did an analysis. This guy's a computer science graduate student at Stanford. GPT-4 got 75%. Gemini gets 95%, which would put you in the top 1 or 1/10 of 1% of test takers. Fable would probably do better, honestly, if we ever get access to it again. Let's say 2023 was the base camp. We're rolling up the hill now. Now, one of the things that's hard about this is you kind of formulate your expectations at a moment, and what happens is we just keep going up the hill. And so you lock in a view, but your view, you got to adapt the view as you go up the hill, because what was true in 2023 or 2024 just is not true now. And that's part of what I hope to do today, is do a little bit of the kind of like, allow yourself to have a reset of whatever you think, because we're just heading up that hill further and further on every model release. We've seen big innovations across what you might call the AI stack. So this is, originally it's basically the model layer. We talk about, how good is this model? How good is that model? Then you started to see people do what's called RAG. That was popular for a while. It's kind of like a baby agent, where you do like a very specific kind of thing where, you try to basically give context to a model, and that tends to improve the answers. That's kind of on its way out now. Then you saw the models basically doing reasoning. So reasoning was just a reflection or a pause, or try to sort of in a very particular way. This is like, for example, the O series that GPT put out. That's what these models did. That again was like a 2024, 2025 kind of idea. That was innovations at the model layer. And then we have all these innovations at the agentic or tool calling layer. And that's kind of, where things are. And so that's what's allowing people to go up those. Some of that's happening like on the model provider side, and some is happening in the tools that people are building in the space. If you're interested, this is a book I've written with my good friend Claude. And it's available, either you can buy it or the PDF is available for free. So again, you're going to get the slides, but I'll pause for 10 seconds if anybody is interested in this. This is just an overview of agents, the history of agents, and kind of how do you design an agent, so it's there for your consideration, but it's just called Agentic AI in Law and Finance. Again, it's available for about $20 US if you want the print copy, or if you want the PDF, it's $0 on SSRN. But I think for us, the only real question is, hey, can this actually do legal work? So it can, I think, and just in the presentation at the beginning, of course, to some extent already that's true. What can we do to even do more? What is the frontier in all of this? So over the past 3 years, of course, people have been figuring out, how do we use these things? How do we use these things safely and responsibly, of course? I teach legal ethics, so we want to do this ethically, obviously. But, when you see capabilities and you're being even halfway reasonable, you're like, okay, we got to figure out some way to use this. This is pretty significant. But how and in what way? So one of the things at the beginning is there was not an enterprise deployment available at all. The ChatGPT was, we are going to put everything you type in here back in the model. That's, I don't know. Can I get an ethics opinion on that? Is that okay? No, not okay. Okay, so that ChatGPT was not even close to ready for prime time. But again, we got to update what's going on in the meantime. There were no enterprise deployment options. That has changed quite substantially. Then things have shown up on people's desks through multiple layers. Now, one is through the cloud providers. And a bunch of organizations, a bunch of law firms in 2023 and beyond started creating essentially walled gardens or private instances of these models. And that allowed people to kind of test, in that case, just the model layer, not the rest of the stack. And that was kind of the dominant approach when chatbots were kind of the only way to slice this up. That's one of the things that's changing. And we had kind of people playing around with prompts, prompt engineering. We should just call it playing around with prompts. It was not engineering in any sense of the word, okay? It's effing around with prompts is another way of saying, but right, you know, like, oh, you know, I throw this in here, I tell the magic genie to do something for me, you know, but that required the model to interpret what the user was actually asking for. And let's just say people weren't exactly, you know, writing the most pristine things that in there. That, you know, another way people got experience with this is through productivity tools. So a lot of law firms, you know, took us and organizations went through the kind of co-pilot kind of saga, let's call it. Now look, it was never designed for legal work. I don't know where anybody got that idea. Until relatively recently, Microsoft showed no interest whatsoever on this sector of the economy. Why would you really? Because it's every business professional, lawyers. What's the more, I mean, you're $1 trillion company. What moves the needle? This, not a deli slice, little tiny thin slice of the universe. Some of that has changed. So again, that was kind of, so people got a little disillusioned from that experience in most instances. All the research platforms all got some version of this, mostly staple gunning it into the product they already had or buying a product if they didn't have one. These are just some examples. And then we've seen a few of these incredibly heavily capitalized startups that have come into this thing. Now look, they made really big inroads into large law firms and otherwise. And I'm talking about these two in particular. I think it's great. Let's just start with the good part. The good part is great because they got it into a lot of people's hands. That's the good part. And people could, it's almost like a training program. Like, let's just get it in front of a bunch of people and kind of see if they can, yeah. There's another side of the story, okay? When you raise $1 billion, you are an extremely vulnerable company, okay? You know, the tide goes in and the tide goes out. So it doesn't mean they're going to make it around. I'm not here to prognosticate that, but I'm just saying that you have vulnerabilities as a function of raising. You know, the people that give you the money, they actually kind of like have some expectations for you. It's not, yeah. Rich Sutton, this is a very important essay that you should all read called The Bitter Lesson. Now, this is a guy that invented reinforcement learning. He won essentially the Nobel Prize of Computer Science. Now, Dwarkesh is one of my favorite podcasts. I would encourage you to listen to it if you want. Like, it's pretty technical. It's in the details, but the bitter lesson is this. You make all these little changes, engineering, you think you're like nailing it, and this big tidal wave just comes on top of you and knocks over your sandcastle. You build all these very specific things, and Claude just comes over top of you. You build all these specific things, Gemini comes on over top of you, where the capabilities in the frontier models just overwhelm everything that you do in the meantime. That's just something you want to keep in mind. If you don't spend a ton of money to build it and it's sort of spot fabricated, no problem. But if you put a ton of money into one specific sandcastle and the water comes over the top, that's the problem. The bitter lesson is a lesson I've learned personally. I've written papers, I've built things, and I've had my sandcastle destroyed, okay? So it is what it is, but it's something you should think about in terms of balancing things out. That doesn't mean don't do anything. It just means you want to make sure that the return schedule is like not, in 20 years from now, this is all going to work out. It's got to be a shorter timeline. The broader tidal wave can just overwhelm things. This is kind of the open question right now. Does the bigger model just outperform something that's verticalized specific to the industry? That is an open question. The bitter lesson would imply that the bigger thing will overwhelm the smaller thing, but it's not a guarantee. Now, again, those are more general form things. Then there's these there are literally hundreds of these products that do like a relatively narrow thing. So this is just some examples. In the discovery and investigations kind of world, there's a bunch of kind of platforms that people use to facilitate all, and they've existed before generative AI, relativity, reveal, and what have you. there's summarize a bunch of information, whether it's a deposition or testimony that's given in any context. So a big case, there's a lot of moving parts and just trying to make sense of all that. So again, there's a slew of companies that do this. I think this is the most interesting idea, is real time. So like this is what a lot of associates do when you're a litigator. It's, okay, ask them this question. Oh, this is inconsistent with that thing. And they tap you on the shoulder. Ask them that thing, But it's like the more information to keep track of, it's like kind of hard to index over all and it's like something that could kind of nudge you and say, oh, that's inconsistent with their statement here, or that's inconsistent with this witness over there. That's the type of thing. That's how this is being a better lawyer, actually. There's a lot of contract drafting and negotiation platforms. Again, a whole slew of them. I'm not endorsing or not endorsing one. I'm just trying to show you, again, for everyone I show you, there's 20 others. The point is, people have come in and tried to take the capabilities and then direct it very specifically into specific problems. I think this is one of the most interesting things going on right now. Is the president of the American Arbitration Association, who used to be a professor when I went to law school. She was a judge. It's built this is for construction disputes, but an automated, basically, judge. This is robo-judge, basically. The project is sitting here not moving until they resolve. It's costing millions of dollars a day. Like one of these big high rises or something like this. It's a ton of money. We just need a resolution. We can't go through the whole process and not figure out the answer in a year. We need the project to move. So we need to have an agreed upon process for just solving a dispute between whatever it is, general contractor, subcontractor, whatever the flavor of it is. So I think that this kind of idea is a very fundamental idea, because that's actually changing the way you do law. That's changing the entire, particularly the speed at which things operate. Things need to operate more at the speed of business. That's what we heard at the beginning. Yeah? At the speed of business. You needed to get your answer. And it's like, yes, right. Yeah. Predicting outcomes in disputes. This is another area I've spent a lot of time in. Some of this involves generative models. Most of this involves methods that existed before the last few years. It's not a new idea. I literally, I wrote a paper. This is predicting Supreme Court decisions. There are literally 100 papers like this from jurisdictions all over the world, where it's basically either something's predictable or it's random. If it's random, you tell your client, I'm going to flip a coin. Whatever comes up, that's what we're going to do. That's a form of legal advice, I suppose. Or there's a pattern, and we're going to try to discern it. And we can either use people to do the discernment, or we can use a model. And my prior company was called Lex Predict, like law predict, basically. And that was a big focus of stuff we were interested in. But there's whole industries, sub-industries that are adjacent to our industry, predicated on the idea that you can make a forecast. Financiers aren't well, we'll just go like this and figure out what's going on. That's not how finance and insurance work. It's actually about, maths and things like this. Yeah. So, and then for companies, this is one of the big, especially multinationals, this is this is probably the biggest problem there is, actually. If you're operating in all these countries, you're okay, well, I got to have the local policy for this country be different than that country. And just managing that at a large scale enterprise is a big calorie burn. There's whole teams of people in compliance trying to chase all this stuff down. Just like an air traffic control system to manage all the planes. That's a great candidate for machine enablement. And that's why you've seen a number of companies in this area. It's just one of them in there, but these are just examples. This is a big venture capital room. Everywhere is compliance. AI's biggest enterprise opportunity is its most boring. I like things that are boring. Boring is great. You know what boring means? Money. It means it's going to be a successful investment, right? Because it's I don't want to do that. That's boring. Great. I'll let the machine do that. It's okay. There you go. And then obviously on the back office and in the regulatory spheres, there's a bunch of other stuff on the running law firm side of things that can be automated. That kind of brings us to the present. There's a lot happening right now. So therefore I would encourage you to pay more attention to this. Obviously it's hard to balance your day job, but here's a few things. I see this dialogue every single time I talk to people. FUD and FOMO. FUD is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And lawyers lean heavily onto this side. FOMO is fear of missing out. People go between these two perspectives in the same discussion because there's merit to both sides of this. That's why. This is the number one FUD thing, hallucinations. Now, let's just start with that. People hallucinate all the time. Let's just start with that. It isn't baseline 100% we're comparing to. Why don't we just start with that as our first lemma one is that, all right? This is the number one FUD item, and it has limited people's desire to use these capabilities. I think it's often, there's a good faith version of it, and then there's the, I don't really want to do this, so I'm going to say this, and therefore it like absolves me from having to use anything. So we had, famous examples like this. Now, this is a few years ago. We had one of the fanciest law firms on planet Earth involved in this. Yeah. Like in the last 2 months. They just need to charge more per hour. I think that's the solution here, right? It's just not enough. We need more money. That's the key. So I love this. This is a tracker of it. This is a lower end number because there's almost certainly more examples in this. There are 1,635 documented examples of this. There are 5 in South Africa. Again, for everyone they found, there's got to be others. It's not like, right? So this is a thing. Let's just become clear about it. This is definitely a thing. So that means that we have to have humans in the loop overseeing it. That already existed. Every law firm I've ever, we say, oh, hi, welcome to the law firm. You're a brand new associate. Please feel free to draft something and send it to the client or to the court without anybody looking at it. Apparently that's what Sullivan Cromwell's does, but I don't think anybody else does that, right? They say, oh, no, we have a whole process. I'm going to mark this whole thing up and give it back to you, which is to say we had that before there were computers involved, and we just need to bring the same principles to bear on these sort of capabilities. Now, the rate of hallucination has been going down, but it's not zero. So you need to validate what comes out of these systems. Now, on the FOMO side, let's just start with the clients. Normal clients, that means non-enterprises, they're already coming to their lawyers all the time and say, ChatGPT told me this, Claude told me this. What do you think? They already got the picture of what the future is going to be. Machines first, expertise second. That's the structure. They already got it. They cut right to the chase. I'm paying you for the value add above this because I already know a machine can do this. Please file your amendments to this. And then the larger clients, of course, are experimenting with the capabilities. Often they are limited by whatever the enterprise has selected as what capability they have access to. Now, Clock is like legal operations, one of the big legal operations group. My friend David Cambry and I did a panel back last year. This is what people said, which I totally understand. I am not going to pay for something a computer can do. Obviously. Who would do that? I'm happy to pay for the value add above that, though. Yes, of course. Right. And so what we've seen is, of course, acceleration, both in law firms and legal departments. Now, these are some surveys from the U.S. I think there's parallel ones in some other jurisdictions. But, we went from a quarter of people to 50% in October. And now, again, 90, 89, or 80, 87% by March of this year. Stuff's coming in. It's it just took a little while. The capabilities were already there, but people just kind of get comfortable with it. There's huge differences, though, in the ability of users to leverage these capabilities, insane differences. Now let's go to individual lawyers. Obviously, people are trying to strike a balance between FOMO and prudence, but this has changed a lot in the last 12 months. Again, at the end of last year, there was a big report basically finally acknowledging this is happening. Yeah. And then, you get in this, now we see, lots, basically every survey is yeah, people are using this regularly now. 7 in 10 people or something like this. This is probably a way to say it. 12 months ago, it was the minority. Now it's the majority. You're in the minority if you're not using the capabilities, basically now. And that was not true 12 months ago. This is why we're heading up the hill and people are like, okay, I'm getting on the trek. I'm getting on the journey too. Now, firms, of course, are thinking about, well, what do we buy and what do we build and what do we fabricate on the spot? And are we just going to, To understand that calculus, you have to understand the unit economics of what's been going on. This is critical. Don't lose the thread of the economics here. Costs have declined massively, but then there's sort of the next frontier and the next frontier. The original technology, though, like when it came out, the original like GPT-4 was $180 for 1 million tokens. Then by 2024, it's $9. And then DeepSeek came in, and people were able to both use that or use the tech capabilities. There was a ton of innovations in the DeepSeek open source model, like at very, very like technical layer, but people were like, oh, well, we can do that too. People copied all the innovations basically, including, Facebook. And then I was just in Asia. I mean, Qwen is by far the most used model in the world. It's like not even close. This is Alibaba, Chinese model. Billion downloads. Nothing that's like. Now, we only went $180 to 49 cents to 25 cents to maybe 13 cents if you're using Qwen. So now people are they're hoarding token. It's like, how many words can I process now that I have an unlimited amount? And now people are hitting new budget problems because they're using so much compute compared to what they were using before. But the per unit cost is going down, but the number of units being consumed is going way up. So this is the balancing act. It's going to be build versus buy for at least for some problems. Not all problems. You got to pick your. And that, of course, historically would lean in the direction of larger law firms. And we've seen a lot of larger law firms doing something in this area. Including Kirkland, 500 million. It's 500 million among friends anyway. Yeah. But, we see smaller firms too. So don't think it has to be big firms. That's really the implication now. It's never been easier to build things. So again, you can build a lot of little niche things relatively quickly. Spot fabricate, like 3D printing. Quick, boom, build on the fly. Build. That's kind of what all these folks are saying. But you have to practice the building stuff. You don't just instantaneously. It's not been the core competency of a law firm historically to build things. We're in the whatever it takes business. Yeah? That's what it is. We're in the whatever it takes business. So this is one of the more interesting developments to me is these so-called AI native law firms. A lot of money are going into this. So hundreds of millions to about $1 billion of venture capital has gone on. This is a directory of them. What's an AI native law firm? Well, if I had to summarize it, it's machines first, people second. Machines first, people second. Just like the clients are saying, what is ChatGPT? We're starting after the machine's already taken the cut at this. We're not having you start with it. We're going to start here. And that's happening across professional services, by the way. This isn't unique to law. It's happening in accounting. It's happening in other fields. I'm writing a book about it, more of a novel called Building AI. Basically, it's an AI native law firm book, but it's a novel. It's a story of an individual entrepreneur who basically gets mad because their managing partner is saying Copilot's the answer for everything, and is like, no, it's not. And that's the opening volley of the book, and then the rest of her journey starts there. But the thesis is this: if you really know how to use these capabilities, then there's an enormous value surplus on the table. Meaning the cost to deliver versus the cost the market currently prices the activity for. That's the spread. So you can actually lower the price and still have enormous margins because your cost to deliver is completely different. And the clients are still anchored to a current price of mostly if a human hand crafted this, like they're painting the Sistine Chapel or something like this, yeah? Many of folks that are doing this are vibe coding using things like Claude Code. So if you're not familiar with vibe coding, it's basically, programming is still important to know because it helps you debug vibe coding. But the idea is bottleneck. It's amazing how much you can do just by saying words, and Claude will write the code for you to do the thing. So I'm now a professor of vibe coding. I'm just like Rick Rubin here. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. I'm done with this. I'm gonna have a beard down to here by the time it's all said and done. This is what's been going on Wall Street. All of these software companies are getting clobbered over this because the view is, well, wait a minute. If I can build my own Salesforce, why do I need Salesforce? It's not I mean, you can buy the other side of that bet. It's absolute murderer's row over here on these SaaS companies. So those ideas have started to cross in the mainstream. Something big is happening. There's an essay was written by a guy in Silicon Valley that got a lot of play online. But it's basically like, this is going to really remake things. It's sort of like trying to communicate these capabilities. Because I think if you've seen the frontier of the capabilities, then you have a different view than if if you're using the $20 a month type version of things. Something big is happening. Then there's this, the Claude native law firm. It's basically the law version of this story right here. Hey, you know what's better than a lot of the tools? Claude Code, actually. Claude Code is unbelievable. That's, to me, it feels like the bitter lesson all over again. But we'll see where it goes. Now, here's some demonstration. These are just individual lawyers and building projects. And you like, this is just one of these groups that have formed, basically saying, well, look what I built, look what I built, look what I built. All over the world. Basically vibe coding it, building stuff over the weekend. Even like thing like Spellbook was vibe coded to begin with Replit. And that's like, one of the companies that's sort of grown up in this area. And he's the leader of the legal quant folks, but he basically built his own Spellbook. Like, you'd be amazed what you can get done in a weekend now. In just the last few weeks, so we have this, and there's like 5 other versions of this, but basically like, hey, it is not an equivalency. Let's just be clear. He built it in 2 weeks. What I might ask you to think about, what could you do in a year? Or in 6 months? A lot, actually, is the answer. This is a barrister in New Zealand. I know nothing about it, but he basically built his own version of their case database. Like over the weekend. He didn't strike me as somebody who was super technical. He's something like a barrister goes to court kind of guy. Yeah, that's the point, right? He's like, oh, well, I'm just going to go do this because I can. So, and then there's this. I mean, you look at some of the companies, you're like, well, we can do this too. We can do this too. Now, they haven't really fully come in yet, but they're at least putting the marker in the ground. Now, I know what this "we're partners" means. You know what this means. There's an old one from the Microsoft antitrust case called Embrace, Extend, Extinguish. That's what a good monopolist does, right? They say, embrace, extend, extinguish. That's what this sounds a lot like to me. Oh, seems like a lot of users like this particular function. Maybe we'll just put it in Claude. There's a big disconnect between the power users and the people just kicking the tires on this. That's why you hear people talk about it all being hype, because they're living in an alternative reality. Like, you actually see the frontier, you're not going to say that. You're not going to say it can do everything, but you're going to have a much more measured tone about telling me this. Like that's again, we're up the hill further. We're not at the base camp anymore. Anthropic put out this graphic where they showed the spread across different sectors. This isn't unique to law, where they say, here's what we kind of see people doing. Here's what we actually think is the capabilities. In other words, most people are in the red or less, and this is the blue is actually what the models are capable of doing. And people need to learn how to go from the red to the blue. That's why there's like 2 alternative realities. Like, one person tells you one thing. Just remember this. Most people have barely used the capabilities. They've used the free models. They've used the $20 a month equivalent subscription. The red is the coding harness version. It's like 1% of people or less. And I think that would be true in law too. If you haven't done the red thing, you're not fully read in on where we actually are. Try to get into the red square. And that brings me here to close of the near future. I mean, I think every organization's got to balance experimentation with intelligent use of resources. The frontier continues to move out as we go up the hill. Our job is to continue to find the complementary skills. I am not a doomer that says all the lawyers are going away with computers, but the work's going to change and you got to get with it. I'm not doom and gloom on all this. We've automated certain types of legal work in this century already. We used to have people read all these emails or whatever. Computers basically do all that now. Thank God. Nobody liked doing that in the first place. Yeah. The world moved on. The legal industry moved forward. That's just a long way of saying it's hard to make predictions about labor markets. But I mean, they gave the Nobel Prize this year in economics because this is like the topic of our times, is what is this all going to mean for lawyers, narrow, society, bigger. But I think people fixate on what's going on automated and what's not, what's being made possible. The possibility of working in a totally different way is right in our hands. So here's an aggregate forecast, by the way, for the and I think this is going to bear out. More jobs in the end. Now, certain things will get automated. Okay, so be it. So be it. Just make sure you get to the green. How that plays out in the legal sector will depend on future developments, but my concluding thoughts are this. Welcome to the AI era, already in progress. The objection time is over. Okay? It's over. Court has heard your case. It's over. Okay? Now, a lot has already happened, but it feels that way because a lot has happened, but in my view, we're still in the second act of this play. There's stuff coming down the pipe that is like at a whole nother level from anything that you've seen so far, like world models. And this is a great paper, the Darwin-Goodall machine. Actual evolution, models that are built with actual kind of evolutionary dynamics. The way because they're very focused on like, how did we learn all these things? Your mind can do so many things so effortlessly, and we have to put a computer the size of, I don't know, this entire facility together to do basic stuff. So we should try to emulate. This is the idea. So we'll have to keep adapting as the landscape adapts, but I know we're up to the task. And that's why I think the best is still yet to come. So thank you very much. I'm Dan Katz, Chicago Kent College of Law. Thank you very much for your attention. All right.
Thank you. Time for questions. I think we can take some questions because I need the stage team to help set up for the fireside. So I am going to use my program director powers to ask questions. Anyone with questions for Prof. Katz? Do we have a roving mic as we invite questions? All right. Anyone with questions? No, they've got a mic. This one is for you, Prof. We've got a question here at the front. Hands up high, please, if you've got a question. Let's wait for the microphone, please. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Alison. So, Professor, what is all this going to do in terms of the environmental space where we are in? You know, you look at these data centers, you look at when you are running and crunching something through your AI agent, the amount of energy that your computer is using, it makes a noise.
And water.
And, you know, what is that going to do to our world?
I think what we need is the same clever engineers to figure out how to be more compute efficient about what they're doing. Now, that has been the entire history of computing is again, computer was this big, then this computer is faster than that computer was. So we need more work on that end of all of this because it's kind of hard to imagine we're going to say, oh, we're not allowed to do it. Now we could have a tax regime or something that says, hey, if you're going to use this, there has to be some essentially like a carbon offset or something like this. But the most important thing is actually just progress on the engineering side as I see it, because that would allow us to basically take the capacity we have and get a lot more out of it. But it is an energy hog. There's no disputing that at all.
Another question here in the front. And while we're doing that, just confirming our fireside is up next. We're good? Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Lovely keynote. I have a question. On one side, on the near future, you spoke about the balance between experimentation, AI, and resources for corporate. You also did say that we teach ethics. And then you spoke about how economics is a question of our time now, real altruic social impact. So I wonder where you're at in your studies in merging those two sides of the coin. In the context of economic growth for our nations, what is the right ethical response for corporate when it comes to how they balance resources, AI, and experimentation? Thank you.
Well, I think the first thing is as people learn to use these capabilities, they can use them to create a lot of economic value a lot more efficiently than what we have today, which is a lot of people kind of trying things and they don't quite know what to do. And so they burn a lot of resources basically and don't have a lot to show for it. But that's the period where, like, again, a lot of people, if you look at these surveys, have really mostly started to use these capabilities in the last 12 months. So there's a learning curve, like with any new technology. I'm hopeful that the economic growth will be created from these capabilities in a more efficient way than we see today. Now, again, your ethical responsibility doesn't go away. One of your ethical responsibilities to your clients is to efficiently steward their resources. I know sometimes that gets forgotten, which is to say, don't waste their time using a hand-stitched capability when a machine is capable of doing it. But again, I think the clients are getting the picture now. Again, all the way down to just like regular people who are like, here's my thing. What do you think? They've already cut to the chase. It sounds like you just sort of did a self-help version of it all. But
Yes.
But you know, the turnaround times, and that's the other thing the AI native law firms are really focused on, is very fast turnaround times. It's working at the speed of business. We actually have the capacity to do a lot better on things like that. Now, not everything. Some things just take a long time inherently, and it doesn't matter if machines are around or whatever. Some things it's just like, well, you know, next week.
And thank you very much,
All
Prof.
right.
Katz.
Thank you.
Let's give him a round of applause. I wanted to have a small family meeting as a country to say, do we tell them what happened with our AI policy paper, or we keep quiet? So as a country, we've decided, oh, all right, well, Prof. Katz, you're on your own on that matter. You can look it up yourself. I won't talk about hallucinations and policies that were pulled because the Department of Communication. Cut. Thank you for joining us in our lovely country, Prof. Katz. We are on top of AI, let me tell you that. I don't think we need to worry too much about AI replacing our capabilities, especially when we're smart. I'll tell you why. Prof. Katz mentioned that December 2022 on ChatGPT, he prompted it to take the bar exam. December 2022, I was prompting ChatGPT, you are the world's best dating coach. Explain to me why he hasn't texted me back when he said he had a great time at our second date. So between the two, Prof. Katz, I think intelligent human beings will still maintain their advantage in the world of growing AI adoption. Right. Next up, we have a conversation, which is a fireside chat that will look at the complexity we find ourselves in. What happens when subject matter experts are able to access capabilities that previously sat inside large organizations? Do we see more specialists building their own practices? Do we see expertise becoming increasingly democratized? How do legal professionals position themselves for a world where access to powerful tools becomes increasingly widespread? And to help us explore these questions, we are joined by one of Africa's leading voices in legal innovation. Alia Mani is partner at Weber Wenzel and director of Weber Wenzel Fusion, where she leads the firm's AI, legal technology, and new law division, bringing together expertise across law, entrepreneurship, operations, design, and technology. She's helping redefine how legal services are delivered in an increasingly digital world. And joining her for this fireside, we have the pleasure of having with us today Nicola Shaver, CEO and co-founder of Legal Tech Hub, the world's leading legal technology intelligence platform. She's a former practicing lawyer and global managing director of knowledge and practice innovation at Paul Hastings. Nicola is recognized globally as one of the most influential voices shaping the future of legal technology and AI adoption. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming to the stage Alia Mani and Nicola Shaver. Know the protocol. To the stage, Alia. Okay, You ready to go?
Is this on? Yes. Thank you so much. And before we sit down and start, I just thought I would frame the way that Alia and I have decided we're going to run this. Rather than having a dry fireside chat where, we talk about the themes that all of us will be speaking about for the rest of the day and many of you for the next 2 days, we thought we would set this up as somewhat of a debate. So we're going to highlight a number of topics, and each of us, for each of those topics, one of us will be the opener and provide one side of the discussion, and the other will act as contrarian, so that we can engage in a little bit of a debate that will provide to you context around how nuanced many of the questions are that all of us are dealing with on a regular basis at the moment. I will say that when we first started out to do this, we thought we might have differing opinions on a lot of these things, and so we could have a healthy debate naturally, but in fact, we have very similar views. So we are taking contrarian positions deliberately as part of this, and it's my delight to be joined by Alia for this. Thank you, Alia.
Thank you. Thank you, Nikki, for the introduction. It is really hard. I think there isn't one answer to every challenge we face today, and half of it is understanding the full picture and the nuance. So we'll see where we get. We'll pretend to debate things, but hopefully show you the full side of the picture.
Well, so I think our first item is AI is making legal work better.
AI is making legal work better, surfacing more insights. It's enabling us to do certain work faster, in giving clients the deliverables and turnaround times they need in ways that are packaged better and differently. It's raising the floor on things that we didn't think were possible. So it's really been transformative in the way it is change how we deliver legal services.
So Alia, I'm going to disagree with you here. I have heard many stories, and so curious to talk to a lot of you during the day to see whether you've heard these as well, of AI actually making things harder and problematic in the workplace. Professor Dan Katz, of course, talked about hallucinations, which is something we're all very aware of. But moving beyond that, some of the things that we're hearing more and more about are things like applications or forms that used to be quite short documents suddenly coming in at 4 times the length of what they have been before, therefore requiring more time in order to review them. We've also heard stories, for example, of law firms submitting to other law firms very comprehensive red lines of a contract, which then, upon review, appear to have been developed by AI without sufficient human oversight. And many of the red lines actually are purposeless, would not actually have been there had it been a person putting together the red line. Again, then requiring more work when it comes to negotiation, because instead of just pushing back against legitimate objections, the first step becomes, is this red line relevant and legitimate? And then a lawyer actually having to take time to explain to the other side why their objection is actually irrelevant according to law. And so I think, when we're seeing this kind of problem, as well as the issues that, of course, where juniors are brought in to do work, and there is inadequate supervision by partners, the work quality can potentially go down, especially when there isn't adequate verification by partners. And it's all well and good to say that things are getting faster, but if the work is getting longer and it's still requiring verification, it's something I call verification tax that is required now on all legal work. Can we really say that it's making things better?
So then my question to you is this a technology problem or a people and process problem, right? People were, paid by the billable hour, so I will argue my case and I will put all the things in there to protect my client. And then I think the market changed and clients have an expectation that a lawyer should be commercial, should apply their mind, they should find technology that eliminates some of the verification tax, or at least the time to do that. So I would argue that it's a systems in terms of people thinking and accountability problem if that is the outcome, and it's not necessarily AI.
I never thought of that. People and process.
Ha.
No. So again, of course, we actually do agree on this, but I do, it's always worth with every single one of these looking at the nuance, right? All of these are actually highly complex questions. And because all of this is still relatively new, there is the requirement of kind of going through this period of transition, and there will be teething problems where it takes a while for people to put those processes in place. But just being aware that there are those teething problems, and probably for a lot of your lawyer base, there'll be a period of having to explain to them why everything just hasn't, and to your clients, why everything hasn't just immediately become shorter, faster, better.
Yeah. And I think we have to sort of unpack what good means or better means or what good enough means. I think understanding what quality looks like even amongst lawyers or partners or associates. And so I think that's half the problem. And when you overlay AI that, we need to have the debate, but how to raise the floor in a meaningful way and have AI augment that, not take away from it.
Yes. All right. So moving on to the next proposition, AI is making legal services cheaper, related to number one. I'll open this one. So, I mean, in any industry where time is billed by the hour and that's how we bill, efficiency, of course, is going to make work cheaper because things are happening faster. And of course, in-house counsel, and we're seeing this already in many instances, clients are going to require, in fact, that we do things faster, but then also that therefore work is cheaper. And I've sat on panels in the last year or 2 years with GCs on the client side who have explicitly said, yes, we expect our law firms to be using AI, but we then also expect the prices to fall.
So I'll concede some of that, in that there's certain types of work, even pre-Gen AI, which if it was a certain lower complexity task, it was repeatable, there were processes in place, those things have become cheaper. I used to paginate by hand at court, and thankfully that doesn't happen. And there are all sorts of crazier versions of that which have become and should become cheaper. But I do think that there are different types of legal work, different types of complexity, different settings, different risks that we need to bear in mind. And if that is the case, if you lay in the verification tax that you spoke about, Nikki, and we add in that cost, we add in the fact that a lot of these systems aren't as cheap as they think, and we'll talk about that in a second. And even if the compute and token costs for certain models are lower, there are many that are higher. And so when you bake in all of the things you need to do it effectively, then the cost of AI isn't as low as you think. And then the other point is, what are you buying? If you're buying I want this outcome and I need to meet this deadline by Monday and I have 3 million documents, then AI may enable you to meet that deadline, but it's not necessarily going to be a lower price because of all the things you need to do to make that happen. But I do think people need to engage on what cheap means and, more importantly, what value means.
Yeah, absolutely. And, should we all be in a race to the bottom in terms of costs and fees? No, that's obviously not what any of this is about. It's about actually improving the service of law and improving the quality of the outcome. So one thing that I've been super aware of is that since we started moving into adoption of AI rather than just experimentation, a lot of the focus around ROI has been on efficiency and productivity. And I completely agree with you, Alia, that actually moving towards looking at value rather than efficiency is fantastic. And sometimes those two things will be aligned. Sometimes in workflows where there is significant speed that can be gained through AI, there is value to that. And I think one of the questions we need to ask is, does it make sense to lower the cost of work delivered simply because it's delivered faster? If you're able to turn something around on an urgent schedule, doesn't that actually allow for a premium to be charged? Is it necessarily the case that we should be looking at it as cheaper. If you look at, we were talking about dry cleaning services. You know, you go and drop something off and, you know, it might take a week normally to turn around. But say you have an event coming up and you need it the next day, well, it doesn't become cheaper because you're asking for it faster. It becomes more expensive.
Yeah. And I think we also need to think about accountability, I suppose. If you're going to be accountable for the outcome and it's a high risk outcome, then I need to cover my insurance. So I think that those are the things we all need to think about, even when we bring things in-house or we stop outsourcing, is that there's inherent costs and risks we need to bake into our modeling around that. But speaking of cheaper, I've spent the last 6 months having the Claude debate. We've all been Claudified. Why on earth would I buy legal technology, Nikki? I know you're the founder of Legal Tech Hub and you're going to be biased in this front, but $20 a month is all I need to pay, Nikki. Why would I buy legal tech?
By the way, Claude for Legal is also on our site.
Okay.
Well, Alia, I would say, you know, when you look at the cost of technology, you actually have to look at a lot of different things, not just what it seems to be on paper. So first of all, $20 for a Claude license individually is not going to give you the level of Claude usage that will be secure for an enterprise workplace. So we look at the enterprise version of Claude. And if you're looking at that version of Claude, you're really looking at token consumption and consumption pricing. And that can escalate incredibly quickly. So you might look at the legal AI applications that you're interested in procuring and think they look incredibly expensive. And that Claude Enterprise, by comparison, seems very inexpensive. But if you actually look at the way that Anthropic breaks down its costs, it's more complex than just a single cost. There's a difference, for example, between the cost of tokens on input and on output. If you look at legal work and the way that it actually operates, it's hugely dense in terms of language and documents, which means that unusually in the world, our enterprise usage is going to be quite significant and costs can very, very easily spiral. The other thing we're finding is that there's often a lack of transparency across an organization about token usage, which means that very quickly, without being aware, you're at risk of hitting up against your token limit. And the last thing you want is one of your lawyers busy on a live deal suddenly being cut off from tokens. So it's not just about cost, it's also about availability. And there are all kinds of other things to think about as well. Is the security profile, is your data privacy honored by Claude in the way that it would be for legal AI applications that have been specifically built for the legal industry? And beyond that as well, you need customer service and support from companies that you work with. It's almost like a partnership, or it should be these days, especially. And no one can get Anthropic on the phone, certainly very few people in legal. And that is because we are, as Professor Katz said, a drop in the bucket. Even in the United States, firms that are spending less than $250,000 or $500,000 with Anthropic literally can get no customer support. Makes it very difficult to troubleshoot and think about how this will build out into the future. So while it looks very attractive, if you actually drill into it, the legal AI applications at the moment have a lot of benefits. It's not to say don't use Claude or other frontier models, but just be aware of their limitations and take a nuanced approach to where it makes sense to use them and what the governance is around them.
Yeah. I suppose the other cost overlays in making these things effective, the harnessing that needs to be created, the kind of skills and plugins to get it good enough. And I think often we think that, you know, I've gotten these 15 red lines, it's a good outcome. But when you experience something else that's better, you know the difference. My dad always had this argument that, you know, I'm only ever going to buy a Honda, it's good enough, last 15 years, never have to maintain it. Until there was an accident and your medical bills and the experience of dealing with that fallout. And so I often think about that when we are making build versus buy versus play decisions, is what is the opportunity or the risk I'm creating by going cheaper or the obvious route. And some of these unseen things we need to, I suppose, take into account when you think it is cheap, it is good enough. You have to make a decision that there are trade-offs that you're bringing to bear there too.
Totally. And I heard an interesting story from a law firm in the US that they actually did have Claude. They also have a Harvey license, and they started trying to route their lawyers into Harvey for document-heavy workflows because it was cheaper. Because in Harvey, and this will change, but at the moment, you get limitless access in terms of tokens. And I will say that even when the big providers in legal shift models in terms of pricing, it's likely that because of the amount of spend they have with frontier model labs, they have negotiation power, where we do not have that, because again, even though we might feel very important in the legal industry, we're quite small. So Alia, I want to move to our next proposition, that your AI conversations are confidential and safe if you are having them in an approved legal provided application. And of course, the reason for that is because you've selected carefully. You've done your due diligence. You have made sure that the vendor answers your very complex, rigorous vendor questionnaire, undergone your InfoSec. And so you're ensuring that when any of your lawyers enter confidential client information into the chat, it's not going to training the model, for example, and it's not necessarily being retained for 30 days or any other period of time. And therefore, it's completely safe and you don't need to worry about confidentiality or privilege when you're using AI.
I think it depends on the tool. Honestly, I'm finding it very hard to argue against this point. I think certain tools build for that and give you the confidence and the kind of, through that due diligence, if you've done it properly, you've gone down right to the sub-processor level, you've worried about the data flows going in the right places, you have the right data retention policies in your firm, you've built in the right ethical walls, the risk of that is lower. A lot of this is untested. And there have been cases where there have been forced disclosure, where your prompts have been, they've indicated that those are discoverable in court settings. And when they are discoverable, are they really confidential? The methodology of the lawyer in using those systems could then have to be brought to bear in a court scenario. So I think the how and when and how you retain that information matters, and I think your tool choice matters there. But it's not as black and white as I've bought an enterprise plan of X, they've given me these undertakings, my DPA says that. You need to really think through all the minutiae and also train people on how to use it, look at your systems and your permissioning. But I wish it were a black and white answer, and it's something that I think we should all think about at night.
I agree. I think the nuance here is really you need to be careful when you are choosing. And again, if you go with an enterprise grade frontier model, there are more pitfalls here potentially. But also the jury is out on privilege and what that means. In the US, we've had now 3 cases where the courts have considered it. And it seems to be that we're leaning towards, if you use something that is enterprise and contracted, then it's safe. But if you're using something that is public, then privilege is lost when you enter information into the tool. That's not settled law. And of course, it will vary jurisdictionally. But I also think we need to think as well about prompts as records of the firm. And we don't have time to get into it here, but what does that mean for record keeping and information governance, and even for whether prompts and chats belong on the matter file? Increasingly, people work there. We think of the electronic matter file predominantly as sitting in the DMS. Are we exporting work product from our AI into the DMS so that it is captured? What happens when a partner moves laterally and they have to take the client file? Does that mean they need to take some of the chats from the AI? So lots to think about there.
Yeah. And often we think that we're thinking just about ethical walls as in the same firm acting on both sides of a matter. But the memory part of technology, where you have a scenario where you've put some information into your system and that information from another matter is influencing the output on the second matter, and the data isolation and the memory. I think we often forget about that and what's actually going and what you're giving it access to. It frightens me, actually.
Yes.
So, Nikki, there are a couple of things here that we assume, we're talking about naughty lawyers and data going into places that they shouldn't go. Do you think that AI is creating a risk of malpractice? Do you think that hallucination is the main malpractice risk?
Well, Alia, do you think that hallucinations are a risk, a malpractice risk? I'm going to throw it back at you first.
Well, I mean, it obviously is, right? Especially if you haven't built in the controls around this. If you are being lazy, there have been scenarios where people have been lazy. Often if you look at a brief that is being sanctioned, potentially someone has just not done a good job of the entire brief. But there are scenarios where people are busy, they're exhausted, they're trying to get more done. They don't quite understand the technology and its limitations, and they assume that what's being produced is fact rather than, a statistical, probabilistical outcome. So that is a risk. And I think especially without education, hallucination could result in a lot of malpractice lawsuits, and they already are. And I think it's coming out in the insurance policies covering firms and professional services environments. So I think it is probably number one.
So I'm of course, we are agreed upon the fact that hallucinations are a risk. As we've discussed earlier, putting in place processes to ensure that verification is happening is critical. But a few other things really need to be considered here. One is, and Dan had raised this earlier as well, if you look at your obligations as a lawyer, you do have an obligation to serve your clients well and competently, and to provide the best possible client service. And increasingly, AI is part of that. So if you are part of a firm that determines we are not going to use AI because of the risk of hallucinations, and therefore we will continue to serve our clients the way we always have, and something takes 30 hours when it could easily have taken 2 or 3 or 5 hours, that is not you fulfilling your obligation as a lawyer. And so we need to look at the flip side of it now, which is, I think there is an imperative probably for us as lawyers, both to understand the risks and benefits of AI in practice, but also to offer that to our clients where we know that service delivery will be improved. And if you look at, yes, there is a risk of hallucination, that risk is lower if you're using certain tools, and if those tools are grounded in sound legal content and data. Of course, it's also less if you have the right processes in place. But one thing we need to become comfortable with as a industry is really understanding that there was always risk involved in unreliability or inaccuracy. And in fact, there have been all kinds of tests. So if you look at due diligence and who usually performs due diligence as humans, we throw that at our most junior lawyers. Same with discovery review. And if you compare output, a junior first-year lawyer scores around 60 to 66% in terms of accuracy and reliability, whereas AI now is well above 90% for that same workflow. And there have been benchmarking reports this year as well to flag whether an AI is able to identify risks and red flags within contracts compared to humans, and they perform significantly, I mean, almost outlandishly better, in fact.
Yeah. I think that's the hard thing is realizing that AI capability means realizing when it does a better job than the humans. So notwithstanding that we want to protect our humans, we need to enable them to know the difference. And if you're using manual processes for things that are high risk that AI could do better, you're not serving your client. And if we know that what they want is the highest quality outcome, and you're not bringing to bear your thousands of precedents and knowing what market looks like, if you're not using AI to draw insights and to brainstorm and prep in the way that your counterparty does, then you're also not serving your client. And if our job is to use the best tools and have the best people around us, we're not thinking about protecting our businesses. So I hate to say, agree with you on that.
So Alia, I'm going to tell you that very sadly, lawyers will be replaced by AI. And especially our juniors, we're just not going to hire many juniors anymore. You know, if you look at that Anthropic chart, something like back in 23, it was estimated that 44% of legal work would be affected by AI, and now it's up to something like 78 or 83%, depending on what statistics and studies you look at. Why do we even need juniors anymore? I mean, AI can do all the stuff that junior lawyers do.
Can I ask you a question, just to clarify your
Please.
position? How do you define a lawyer?
Oh, interesting question. Someone who has, well, a human being that has been trained on the law and has been accredited to practice law.
So, if we assume the future of law requires holistic client solutions that includes technology, is it not possible that the future lawyer could be part legal technologist, a part project manager, an innovation specialist? So I think when we talk about the future lawyer, it is not just the technical practitioner and information provider. It is someone who's finding solutions, and those solutions will be supported by AI, not always replaced. And of course, there are arguments about Jevons paradox and maybe the scope of work changing and increasing, and maybe there's more work. But I do think that we have to think more broadly about who the future of the law firm is. We have to think about our succession, because none of us live forever. And we need to ensure that there are people who can serve, who think through the full picture, cover the nuances that the tech can't do. I also think that, and we've had this debate, that AI can actually enable juniors to be better. So they have access to thousands more precedents, a lot more information. They can, in plain language, understand a technical concept faster. They can research the client they're serving. If they're in-house, they can get on top of the business side, the product side. So if you think of the whole person, the whole lawyer, everything we do, AI can actually make us better.
I think that's such a good point, Alia. When you look at, when people make that assertion, they're thinking of lawyers in the way that we define lawyers now, not lawyers with the skills of the future. And we had a panel at Weber Wenzel yesterday with a number of the partners, and what was really interesting was the degree to which each of them in their own practice is now having to think about the way that AI will impact the law in their practice. In other words, there's a lot of additional legal work and legal considerations that come about in this new environment. So it is feasible to contemplate that we'll have more work, especially because law firms will be set up to do more work and to take on more strategic business initiatives with clients as well. So we are in agreement there as well, in fact.
But there is this future of agents. And a couple of our clients and in our business, we're like, there's a world where the agents converse overnight and come up with the answer by the morning. So you won't need humans. Agents are the future. You can now knit together multi-step processes instead of a human standing there clicking in and attaching each tool on each document. So would you agree that agents are the future or not?
Look, agents almost certainly will form part of the future of legal work. We're still quite early in the journey of using agentic AI in the law. It's certainly coming, but there are huge risks involved currently that we are not equipped yet to deal with as law firms. Typically, InfoSec that I speak to at law firms has not yet really caught up from a governance perspective as what it will mean to have agentic AI and what the potential consequences are of that and how you put guardrails around it. And especially what you have when agents are connecting to other agents, for example, through MCP, where there are then downstream consequences of an agent that already has some autonomy accessing other agents that also have autonomy and have access to tool sets that could include data and other systems that you have not yet reviewed internally. So whilst I think they are likely going to be hugely impactful, having humans in the loop and ensuring that we really have scrutinized the implications and implemented secure governance around exactly how they are deployed in our organization will be critical. And we have a decision room coming up after this where we'll go into as well some of the stories around agents and how they can unwittingly go wrong, even when you've set them a goal that seems really clear-cut. But all kinds of bizarre things like recreating an entire library of your emails and storing it on your desktop in a way that makes that quite insecure, because it was trying to achieve a particular goal that it wasn't able to in your native email folder. So all kinds of things can happen at the moment, and we do need to get our arms around that first.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So we are running short on time, but we have two more propositions. The first is that AI will help in-house or legal departments keep more work internally. And of course, we have seen the sophistication of legal departments around AI multiply significantly over the past years. It increased by 50% from 24 to 25, and then again from 25 to where we are already in 26. And with that sophistication comes an understanding of the work that you can do internally as a legal department. And so it just stands to reason that less work will therefore flow to the law firm, especially when, upon being surveyed about the reasons for deploying AI, a lot of general counsel are saying that one of the predominant reasons is to keep costs down by sending less work out to outside counsel.
This is a hard job for me, given where I work 50% of the time. But if I'm very honest, and see if there are any partners who are going to get cross with me for saying this out loud. A couple of you in the room have spoken to us about having that exact objective, saying, I want more control. I want to deliver faster. It takes longer for me to brief outside counsel and then receive the work back. I understand the business context. I don't need to necessarily brief. Interestingly, though, as much as that conversation has happened for certain types of work, we've seen an uptick for other kinds of scenarios where they feel that these are not the kinds of things that they should be keeping out or want to keep in-house. And I think it's actually just a continuation of a longer term story that in-house teams are business professionals and they need to do what's right for the business. And we as law firms actually need to keep adding more value to with and without AI to secure our place in the world.
And I think it's worth stating as well that there is certain work, of course, that should always go to law firms, partly because of the expertise that a lawyer can only get by doing something many, many, many times with deep, deep experience with clients and an understanding of the broader market, but also as an insurance layer to make sure that that work is protected from the client perspective.
In the agent context, something we didn't touch on earlier, but do you think there are going to be less humans and just more and more agents, and like a law firm will look like 3 agents or just three humans and a bunch of agents underneath it? Do you think as humans we're going to spend less time collaborating, and do you think there's still a need for this human interaction?
So look, I will, although it's not part and parcel of my contrarian view, I will say, I think the AI native firm is a really interesting, unique experience, and it is confirming what we're seeing not just in law, but in a lot of industry, which is that with really advanced AI capabilities, you can build a business that is extremely lucrative with far fewer humans than you needed in the past. That is just a fact. But when it comes to collaboration, I have to say that the last years since ChatGPT emerged have been the most collaborative years of my career. It has been a period where all of us are learning together across the client law firm divide, with providers, and all of us kind of finding our way and learning. And I don't see that period of learning slowing down anytime soon, because the technology continues to evolve at pace. So I think there is enormous value from collaboration, in some ways more so now than ever. There's an enormous amount more that can be done between law firms and clients. There are new service delivery models that will enable clients to really work with their firms in ways that were not as possible in the stop-start model of the past for law firms and legal departments. Similarly, the work that they do with their providers, their vendors, is almost more now a partnership because you have to grow and evolve together as the technology evolves. So I think, in fact, although you might think we're moving away from the human becomes more important. And you see that in other ways too. Skills that we used to call soft skills, which is, it's almost derogatory of skills that are so critical. They are more critical now than ever before. The ability to think critically, the ability to really empathize with end users and understand how to solve problems using AI. These are skills that are more important than they ever have been in the past. And so I think we're back to a real focus in on the human and what makes humans special. And with that does come increased collaboration among the humans. So that's the positive note I'd like to end on.
Yeah, and there's just two overlays. One, we've interestingly seen more collaboration and that multiplayer collaboration with experts, lawyers, other counsel on other jurisdictions because of AI and technology. We've also seen scenarios where we actually, as those struggling with innovation, every single headline arriving at 1 a.m. and having to deal with it the next morning, having the benefit of these kinds of conversations, and then realizing that actually it's as capable as AI is, sometimes things average out because it's statistically going to the middle place. And so in trying to find what is special, we need to come together and find the difference so that we can level up and hopefully level up together.
Agreed completely.
Okay.
Well, Alia, thank you so much for this debate that ended up being really just a series of nuanced agreements. We hope it's been helpful to all of you as well. I think our sign-off really is that in anything that appears to be black and white right now, dig deeper into the nuance, because what's happening is incredibly complex, and there are all kinds of things to consider with almost every decision that you're making at the moment. So
thank you, everyone, and looking forward to asking and answering and dealing with some of these challenges with all of you during the course of the conference. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you once again, Nicola and Alia. Another round of applause for them, please. I'm standing between you and your tea break, so I won't make this long. Anyone in the room who are the youngest people in the room? Do we have any first years, second years in the legal firms? Is it all senior people? Okay, do we have any Gen Zs in the room? Yes. Okay, I won't say what I really wanted to say then about AI native and, fewer human beings rather, because, as a millennial, I didn't understand why everyone was going on about the different generations coming through, and still until I started working with Gen Zs. Woo! I'll leave it there. Now I know how you felt about us. Oh, they've taken it pro max, trust me. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is tea time. We are running behind schedule because we have had even slightly more time that we've given to the conversations, the Q&A session. So may I please ask you to be back here in exactly 20 minutes, 11:45, because we have our innovation showcases, and I don't want to cut your lunch, so I'd rather cut your tea. If you want to connect, get someone's number, hook up with them on LinkedIn, continue the conversation. But tea, leg stretch, please be back here, 11:45 sharp. As people that build by the hour, I know you keep time. See you just now.